The same guy came in every night at exactly 3:47 a.m. and bought a Red Bull. Same order, same time, same face. But on the security footage, he showed up in a different car every single night. A red Ford one night, a silver Honda the next, a white pickup after that. I watched him pull up in 7 different vehicles over the course of a week. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name's Tyler, I'm 23, and I work the overnight shift at a BP station about 40 miles south of the Canadian border in northern Minnesota. The kind of place where you see more deer than people, where the nearest actual town is 20 minutes down Highway 53, and where the winter nights stretch so long, you start to forget what the sun looks like. I'd been on nights for about 4 months at that point, pulling 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. 5 days a week. The pay was shit, but rent was cheaper up here than it was back in the cities, and I needed the reset after some stuff went sideways with my ex. My manager Gary told me straight up that most people quit night shift within a month because the isolation gets to them. But I honestly preferred it. No soccer moms yelling about pump numbers, no diesel spills, no teenagers stealing Juul pods. Just me, the fluorescent hum, and the occasional trucker stopping for coffee and a piss. The regular late-night customers were easy to catalog. There was the guy in the Carhartt jacket who came in at 1 a.m. every Tuesday and Thursday for Marlboro Reds and a Mountain Dew. There was the woman in scrubs who worked at the hospital in Hibbing and always grabbed a Kind bar and an iced coffee around 4:30 a.m. on her way home. There was the kid, couldn't have been more than 19, who rolled up in a rusted Civic every Friday night around 2 a.m., eyes glassy, buying Visine and combos. You get a rhythm with people. You learn their patterns, and when someone breaks that pattern, you notice. The Red Bull guy started showing up on a Monday in late October. I was restocking cigarettes behind the counter when the door chimed, and I glanced at the clock out of habit. 3:47 a.m. He walked in like he'd done it 1,000 times before, straight to the cooler in the back, grabbed a Red Bull, came to the counter. Mid-40s maybe, average height, brown jacket, jeans, work boots. The kind of face you'd forget 5 seconds after he walked out. He didn't say anything, just slid 3 singles across the counter, grabbed his change, and left. The whole interaction took maybe 30 seconds. I thought nothing of it. Tuesday night, 3:47 a.m., door chime. Same guy. Same walk to the cooler, same Red Bull, same 3 singles, same silence. I remember smiling a little, thinking, okay, this dude's got a routine. We've all got our things. Wednesday night, 3:47 on the dot. Same exact sequence. Thursday, same. By Friday, I was watching the clock at 3:45, curious if he'd actually show. He did. Exactly 3:47 a.m. The door chimed like it was on a timer. "You're like clockwork," I said when he came to the counter that night, trying to break the weird silence that had built up over the week. He looked at me for the first time, actually made eye contact, and his expression didn't change at all. No smile, no nod, nothing. Just stared at me for a 2 count, took his change, and walked out. The air in the store felt different after that. Colder, maybe. I don't know. I told myself I was being stupid. Saturday night, I decided to check the security footage, mostly out of boredom. We had 4 cameras, one on the register, one on the front door, one on the parking lot, one on the cooler aisle. I rewound to Monday night and watched him pull up in a red Ford Taurus, park, come inside, leave. Tuesday night, I watched him pull up in a silver Honda Accord. Wednesday, a white Chevy Silverado. Thursday, a black Nissan Altima. Friday, a blue Subaru Outback. Saturday, the night I was watching this, he'd pulled up in a gray Dodge Caravan. I sat there in the back office, staring at the monitor, trying to make sense of it. 6 different cars in 6 nights. None of them had the same plates. I checked. I zoomed in on each one and wrote down the numbers. All different. All Minnesota plates, but different registrations. My first thought was maybe he was a mechanic, test driving customer cars or something. But at 3:47 in the morning? Every single night? For a Red Bull he could buy anywhere? I didn't sleep much that day. When I came back Sunday night, I brought a notebook. I was going to write down every detail I could. What he wore, how he moved, anything he said, what car he came in. If this was some weird pattern, I wanted documentation. Gary always told us to report anything unusual. This was northern Minnesota. Meth labs popped up in the woods. People got weird. But what was I going to report? Hey, there's a guy who buys energy drinks on a schedule? I'd sound insane. Sunday, 3:47 a.m., door chime. He walked in, and I felt my shoulders tense up without meaning to. Same path to the cooler, same Red Bull, same walk to the counter. But this time, when he set the can down, I saw something underneath it. A piece of paper, folded once. He slid the 3 singles over, waited for his change, and left. I stood there staring at the Red Bull can for a solid 10 seconds before I picked it up. The note was written in blue ink, block letters, on a piece of torn notebook paper. It said, "Emma still in St. Cloud?" Emma's my sister. She goes to school at St. Cloud State. I felt my hands go numb. I read the note 3 times, like the words would change. They didn't. I walked to the front window and looked out at the parking lot. He was sitting in a tan Toyota Camry, car number 7, just sitting there in the driver's seat, not moving, staring straight ahead. I couldn't see his face clearly through the windshield, but I knew he wasn't looking at his phone or doing anything. Just sitting. After maybe 2 minutes, he started the car and drove off, slow and easy, like he had all the time in the world. I called my sister the second my shift ended. She didn't pick up. It was 7 a.m. on a Sunday. She was asleep. So I left a voicemail, trying not to sound like a lunatic. "Hey, this is weird, but has anyone been asking about you? Like anyone you don't know? Just call me back." She texted me 4 hours later. Question mark? No, why? I didn't know how to explain it over text, so I just said, "Never mind. Wrong number, prank at work. Forget it." Monday night, I almost called in sick. I sat in my car in the parking lot at 10:45 p.m., trying to decide if I was overreacting. A guy knew my sister's name. So what? Maybe he'd seen my name tag. It said Tyler right there on my shirt, and looked me up on Facebook or something. But I don't have Facebook. Haven't since 2019. And my Instagram's private. I don't even use my last name on there. I went inside, started my shift, stocked shelves, helped the Carhartt guy with his cigarettes, cleaned the bathroom, watched the clock. 3:47 a.m. Door chime. I was standing behind the counter, and I felt my stomach drop before I even saw him. Same guy, same jacket. He walked to the cooler, and I watched him on the monitor. He grabbed a Red Bull, turned toward the camera, and for just a second, he looked directly into it. Not at the drinks, not at the shelves, at the lens. Then he walked to the counter and set the can down. Another note underneath. I didn't want to touch it. He stood there, waiting. I rang him up, gave him his change, and he left. I waited until I saw his car, a dark green Mazda, number 8, pull out of a lot before I picked up the can. The note said, "You lived on Maple Drive in Duluth until you were 16. That was the address of my childhood house. We'd moved when I was 16 because my dad got a job in Minneapolis. I hadn't thought about that house in years. The paper felt damp in my hand, even though it wasn't.
I looked at the security monitor. He was gone.
The parking lot was empty except for my car and a semi parked on the far side by the diesel pumps. I tried to think of anyone who would know that address. Old neighbors, my parents' friends. But why would any of them do this? And why now? I pulled up the footage from the last 8 nights and went through every frame I could of his face. I screen grabbed the clearest shot and texted it to my mom with a message, "Do you know this guy?" She responded at noon, "No, who is he? Why?" I told her it was just someone who came into the store, thought he looked familiar. She said she'd never seen him before. Tuesday night, I brought a baseball bat from my apartment and kept it under the counter. I told myself if he tried anything, if he came behind the counter or said something threatening, I'd be ready. But I also knew that was stupid. He hadn't threatened me. He'd just known things, which somehow felt worse. 3:47 a.m. Door chime. My heart was going hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. He did the same routine. Cooler, Red Bull, counter. Another note. He handed me the $3, and I saw his fingernails were clean, neatly trimmed. He looked like a normal, middle-aged guy. Someone's dad, someone's coworker. He didn't look dangerous. But my hands were shaking when I gave him his change. The note said, "The scar on your left knee. Dirt bike. Summer 2011. I have a scar on my left knee from when I wiped out on a dirt bike at my cousin's farm. I was 12. It was July 2011. I'd gone over a jump wrong and landed on gravel, tore my knee open, needed 8 stitches. The scar still there, about 2 inches long, curved like a crescent moon. No one knows about that except family, and maybe a couple of friends from middle school I haven't talked to in a decade.
I felt something cold settle in my chest.
Not like fear exactly. More like the feeling you get when you realize you left your door unlocked and you're 3 hours away from home. I looked up and he was already walking out. I didn't even hear the door chime. He got into a white Ford Explorer, number 9, and drove away. Wednesday, I called the non-emergency police line. I talked to a dispatcher and tried to explain what was happening without sounding paranoid. She asked if he'd threatened me. I said no. She asked if he'd touched me or tried to take anything. I said no. She asked if I had any reason to believe I was in danger. I said I didn't know. She told me to call back if anything escalated, and if I wanted to file a report, I could come down to the station, but there wasn't much they could do about someone buying energy drinks. I hung up, feeling more alone than I had before I called. Wednesday night, 3:47 a.m., door chime. He walked in, and I noticed for the first time that he had a slight limp, favoring his right leg. I noticed because I was looking at everything now. His shoes, his jacket pockets, the way he moved his hands. He grabbed the Red Bull, came to the counter, set it down with another note. This time I just stared at him. "Who are you?" I said. He didn't respond, didn't even blink, just stood there waiting for me to take his money. "How do you know this stuff?" I said. My voice sounded thin, echoey in the empty store. Nothing. No reaction. He slid the $3 forward a half-inch, like a reminder. I rang him up, gave him his change. He left. The note said, "Your grandfather's watch, the one you sold on eBay. You regret it." I did sell my grandfather's watch on eBay. 2 years ago, when I was broke and desperate after losing my job. It was a Seiko, nothing fancy, but it was his, and I'd worn it sometimes, and yeah, I regretted selling it. I thought about trying to buy it back, but I didn't even remember the buyer's username. My throat felt tight.
I wanted to throw up. I didn't.
Thursday night, I set up my phone to record the entire interaction. I had it propped on the shelf behind the counter, angled to catch both of us. I didn't know what I was going to do with the footage, but I needed something. Proof, evidence, something to show people this was real. 3:47 a.m. Door chime. He came in. Routine. Red Bull. Counter. Note. I recorded everything. He didn't say a word. I didn't either this time. He left. I watched the footage back immediately. You could see him clearly, see me clearly, see the exchange. But when I looked at his face on the playback, it was weird. The camera had caught him fine, but his features seemed kind of blurred. Not like the camera was out of focus, just like... I don't know how to describe it. Like he was designed to be forgettable. The note said, "Check behind the cooler, back left corner." I stood there holding the piece of paper. The cooler. The walk-in cooler in the back, where we kept the overflow stock of beer and energy drinks. I looked at the clock. 3:52 a.m. I looked out at the parking lot. His car, a burgundy Chevy Malibu number 10, was gone. The store was empty. I didn't want to go back there. Every part of me was screaming not to go back there. But I went anyway, because what else was I going to do? Just ignore it? I unlocked the cooler and pulled the heavy door open. The cold air hit me, and I could see my breath. We kept the beer on the right side, energy drinks and mixers on the left. I walked to the back left corner, behind the shelves of Red Bull cases. There was a gap between the shelving unit and the wall, maybe 8 inches wide. I had to turn sideways to fit behind it. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The floor back there was dusty, some old spills, a few dead flies. And then I saw it. A wallet. Brown leather, worn at the edges. I crouched down and picked it up, and my hands went completely numb. It was my wallet, the same wallet I'd lost 3 years ago in Iowa, when I've gone down to Des Moines for a weekend with my ex. I thought I left it at a bar, or dropped it somewhere on the street. I'd canceled all my cards, got a new license, figured it was gone forever. But here it was, behind a cooler in northern Minnesota, in a gas station where I'd only worked for 4 months. I opened it. My old driver's license was still inside. The photo from when I was 20. 2 credit cards, both expired. A ticket stub from a movie I didn't remember seeing. And tucked behind the license, a photo I'd completely forgotten about. Me and Emma, at our grandparents' house, standing in front of their cabin up near Ely. I was maybe 14 in the photo. She was 11. We were wearing matching twins jerseys our grandpa had bought us. My legs felt weak. I sat down right there on the cooler floor, my back against the cold wall. The wallet had been gone for 3 years. I'd lost it in a different state, There was no possible way it should be here. And the only person who could have put it here was someone who knew where I worked, knew I worked nights, knew I'd be here alone. I thought about all the notes, the things he knew, and the school, my old address, the scar, the watch, and now this. He didn't just know things about me. He'd had access to my wallet 3 years ago, which meant he'd been, what, following me for 3 years? Longer? I stood up fast, suddenly aware of how vulnerable I was in the cooler. I walked back out to the main store, locked the cooler door behind me, and stood at the counter, trying to catch my breath. The clock said 4:03 a.m. I had 3 hours left of my shift. I pulled out my phone and called the police again. This time, I didn't call the non-emergency line. I called 911. The dispatcher asked what my emergency was, and I tried to explain the guy, the notes, the wallet, but halfway through I realized how insane I sounded. She asked if the person was currently in the building.
I said no.
She asked if I was in immediate danger. I said I didn't know. She said she'd send a deputy to do a welfare check. The deputy showed up 45 minutes later. His name was Kowalski, older guy, tired eyes. I showed him the notes. I showed him the wallet. I showed him the security footage of the Red Bull guy coming in every night. Kowalski took photos of everything, wrote some stuff down in a little notebook. He asked me if I'd ever seen the guy before working here. I said no. He asked if I'd had any disputes with anyone recently, ex-girlfriends, former employers, anyone who might want to mess with me. I said no. He asked if anything had been stolen from the store. I said no. Look, Kowalski said, leaning against the counter. I'm not saying this isn't weird. It is. But we can't arrest someone for buying Red Bull and leaving notes. If he threatens you, if he tries to hurt you, you call immediately. But right now, legally, he hasn't done anything. He had my wallet, I said, from 3 years ago. That's theft, right? Or stalking, or... You can't prove he's the one who put it there, Kowalski said. Could have been anyone. Could have been there for months, and you just didn't notice. I stock that cooler twice a week. It wasn't there. Kowalski sighed. File a report if you want. I'll document this visit. Keep the notes, keep the footage. If anything escalates, we'll have a record. But my advice, quit this job. Go work somewhere else. He left. I finished my shift. I didn't quit. Friday night I came in with a different plan. I was going to stay awake, stay alert, and when he came in at 3:47, I was going to follow him out, see where he went, get his plate number, get something concrete. I drank 3 Red Bulls myself over the course of the shift, pacing the store, checking the cameras every 10 minutes. 3:45 a.m. I positioned myself at the counter with a clear view of the parking lot. My phone was in my hand, ready to record. 3:46 a.m. No headlights. 3:47 a.m. No door chime. 3:48 a.m. Nothing. I felt the silence in my teeth. He'd come every night for 10 nights straight, exactly on time, same routine. And now, the first night I was ready for him, he didn't show. I watched the parking lot. Empty. I checked the cameras. Nothing. I walked outside and looked up and down the highway. No cars in either direction. I went back inside and stood at the counter, my heart doing something weird and arrhythmic in my chest. I looked at the cooler. I didn't want to go back there. I absolutely did not want to go back there. but the note had said, "Check behind the cooler." What if there was something else? What if he'd left something new? I unlocked the cooler and went to the back left corner. Nothing. Just the dust and the gap between the shelves and the wall. I shined my phone light into the space. Empty. I was about to leave when I noticed something on the wall itself, about chest height. Scratched into the metal, like someone had used a key or a knife. Letters. I leaned in close. It said, "Soon." I got out of the cooler, locked it, walked back to the counter. My shift ended at 7 a.m., and I sat there staring at the door until Gary showed up to relieve me. I didn't tell him anything. I went home. I didn't sleep. That was 6 weeks ago. The guy never came back. I checked the cameras every night for 2 weeks straight. 3:47 a.m., nothing. I filed a police report. They took my statement, took the notes, took the wallet. They said they'd investigate, but I haven't heard anything. Kowalski told me they ran the plate numbers from the footage, but 4 of them came back to cars that had been reported stolen in different parts of Minnesota over the past 2 months. The others were registered to people who had no idea their cars had been caught on camera at a gas station. Dead ends everywhere. I still work the night shift. I don't know why. Maybe because quitting feels like letting him win. Maybe because I keep thinking he'll come back and I'll finally get some kind of answer. I move the baseball bat from under the counter to right next to the register, where I can reach it in half a second. I keep the cooler locked unless I'm actively stocking it. I check behind the shelves every shift. The thing that keeps me up isn't even the notes or the wallet anymore. It's the question I can't stop asking. How did he know I'd be working here? I applied to this job on a whim 4 months ago because I saw the listing on Indeed and I needed money. I didn't tell anyone I was applying. I didn't post about it. I just sent in my resume and got hired. So how did someone who had my wallet 3 years ago, someone who knew details about my childhood, know that I'd end up working nights at a BP station 40 miles from the Canadian border? And what did soon mean? I still don't have an answer.